Men's testosterone levels are dropping lower and lower year after year, likely resulting in worse social and health outcomes for men. There are many mainstream basic changes that men can make to help increase their testosterone levels, some of which I covered in a previous video, but in today's video, I want to go deeper into the weeds of the topic. There's definitely a war on masculinity and male health, so today I'm going to cover 5 testosterone hacks that your doctor won't tell you about. The first hack is pretty straightforward, and it's simply to drink filtered water. As we know, water is essential for human life, but the problem is that in this modern day and age, there's so much bullcrap in the water that is disrupting our hormones. You're likely living in an area where lots of women are taking estrogenic birth control pills and then peeing that substance out into your drinking water, since most municipalities don't filter out the water well enough to filter for that hormonal substance. Beyond that, you likely live in an area that fluoridates your water. Fluoridated water has been shown to potentially have testosterone lowering effects as well. And then at the end of the day, our water supply also has so many microplastics in it that you're likely ingesting, and those are going into your body and lowering your testosterone. So what's the solution? In my research, is to drink properly filtered water. Forget your $30 Brita filter jug. They're better than nothing, but they've been shown to be lacking in terms of being able to filter out all of this different kind of hormonal material and stuff like that. What you really need is a proper filtration system, which in my research is a reverse osmosis system, which essentially removes everything from the water, even some of like the good stuff like minerals and whatever. But the thing is, with the minerals, you can always add that back in through salt. But what you really want is to have this reverse osmosis system that takes out everything, so you can get the hormonal birth control and the fluoride and all of that kind of BS out of your water. Testosterone hack number 2 is to be more mindful of the kind of light that you're exposed to on a daily basis. This concerns both the natural light in your life as well as the artificial light that you sit under. Let's start with the natural light. You've been told by doctors and mainstream medical institutions to fear sunlight and fear ultraviolet rays and whatever else. But again, these people don't really have your best interests at heart. And what they don't tell you is that sunlight and being exposed to natural light is actually very, very important for your hormonal levels. Being exposed to more natural light and sunlight can directly help your testosterone levels, because vitamin D, which we absorb and get from the sun, is actually very important in maintaining good testosterone levels. In an indirect way, exposure to natural light and sunlight will still help you increase your testosterone levels, because exposure to natural light, especially earlier in the day, will help set your circadian rhythm on the right track so that your body is releasing the right hormones at the right times throughout the day. The biggest benefit that this will probably have from a testosterone perspective is that you'll be able to sleep better and more easily at night, which, as we know, is very important for testosterone production. Next, let's move to artificial light. There's lots of evidence that suggests to us that fluorescent and LED lights that we are commonly sitting under in the evening and nighttime is actually very bad for our health overall, and as a result is pretty bad for our testosterone as well. The problem with these artificial sources of light is that they're heavily skewed on the visible spectrum towards the color blue. Blue light interferes with the body's ability to produce the hormones required for good sleep at night. So if you're going to be sitting all day, and especially in the evening, under fluorescent or LED lights, which are skewing heavily blue, it's going to be pretty hard to sleep afterwards, which is going to affect your testosterone levels. Beyond just the sleep altering effects, although it is pretty related, there's also evidence, and I found in my research, that humans are likely made to be under what's called full spectrum lighting. So that would basically be where the spectrum of the light that is being emitted is at all of the various different visible colors, as well as ultraviolet and infrared parts of the spectrum as well, whereas which would be natural light. But again, when we're sitting under these artificial sources of light, it is skewed heavily blue, so we're missing the vast majority of the spectrum we should be sitting under and we should be having our eyes and skin exposed to. Lastly, another thing about these artificial sources of light is that they flicker a lot of times per second. Too many times for us to sort of perceptibly notice with our conscious mind, but subconsciously in our brain is actually processing that the light is flickering that many times, and it can be very disruptive to the brain. So it's just sort of another thing that you probably want to avoid. There is evidence that it is not good for our health overall, and I'm sure it is at least in an indirect way, in a roundabout way, also lowering our testosterone. So what's the solution? The solution is to replace your LED or fluorescent light bulbs with incandescent light bulbs. Incandescent bulbs are the old school style of bulbs where there's basically a filament in there, and because of the electric current inside the bulb, it's basically burning the filament, so that's why they run very hot. But the unique thing about incandescent light is that it is essentially light produced by fire. It's not fire in the typical way we're used to seeing with like wood and like, you know, a flame like that, but essentially it is being the filament is being put on fire. And again, the unique thing with that is that an incandescent bulb, because it is that kind of light, is producing full spectrum light, and it's also not flickering, which basically mitigates both of the aforementioned issues we talked about with the artificial LEDs and fluorescent bulbs. Since I switched to incandescent bulbs, I've definitely found that it's easier to fall asleep, and it's just in general a lot easier on my eyes. Before I even knew about any of this like incandescent versus LED stuff or like the science surrounding it, I still thought that like a lot of the light I would say under was really like tough on my eyes. I just thought I was like light sensitive. Like I would be laying down on the bed or something, and if like the light was on up top, which was most of the time a fluorescent or LED light, I would find that it was like very tough on my eyes, and it was like very irritating. It isn't until I found out about this kind of stuff and I switched to incandescent bulbs that I found that it's not that I'm light sensitive, it's just that the light I am under will make anyone light sensitive because it is objectively pretty bad for us. So don't sleep on this piece of advice. Incandescent lights have definitely helped me out a lot on my health journey, so I would recommend that you invest in them just like I did. Next up, at number 3, we have a really controversial one, and this one is electromagnetic frequencies. Firstly, let's just start with basic logic. We know that we are a being that interacts with a lot of frequencies on a day-to-day basis, and our body is actually made to do so. The light that comes into our eyes, that's often as that's in the form of a wave. The sound we hear, you're hearing this video right now, that's entering your ear as a wave. So clearly we are a being that is able to interact with different kinds of waves and frequencies, and that has a certain effect on our body. Next, we do know, even in the mainstream, that certain frequencies can cause us harm. Again, even the mainstream tells us don't go outside and be under ultraviolet radiation, which is an electromagnetic frequency, for too long because it'll penetrate your skin and cause some kind of harm. We know even with x-rays that they'll give you some kind of coating to wear on the part of your body that's not being x-rayed because exposure to too many x-rays can cause harm. So again, electromagnetic frequencies have been basically accepted by the mainstream to have certain negative health effects that we should be avoiding. Yet when it comes to electromagnetic frequencies, say from like your phone or Wi-Fi or something, or Bluetooth, they're gonna act like it's completely benign. But again, let's just think of it logically. Does that really make sense? I don't think so. But at the end of the day, we don't need to speculate or rely on logic to deduce that electromagnetic frequencies can be causing us harm, because there's actual scientific evidence that tells us so, even if it's suppressed. They don't like to popularize these studies, but what you're seeing on screen is an example of one of many studies that have shown that exposure to EMFs, even the kinds that are emitted from your phone or your Wi-Fi router, for example, non-ionizing radiation, could be having harmful effects on your body and especially your fertility and testosterone levels. Now, what's the solution? I think that both myself and you would agree that electricity and electronics have become way too much of a crutch in our lives that we can't live without them. That being said though, there are still very practical things we can do to limit and reduce our exposure to EMFs that'll help us increase our testosterone levels and just sort of better our overall health. The easiest thing you can do to reduce your exposure to harmful EMFs is simply increase the distance of EMF emitting devices from your body. For example, if you're sitting down at work at your desk, instead of keeping your phone in your pocket right beside your balls, take it out and put it on the table in arm's length away from you, or potentially even further. The reason why this is very powerful is because the intensity of an electromagnetic field is reduced by the square of the distance. Now, that might sound kind of it might not make some sense. I'll show an equation. Maybe it'll make more sense if you see it like that. But essentially, in layman's terms, if I am to move the distance of the phone, the source of the electromagnetic radiation, like double the distance away from me, the intensity actually falls by a quarter. So it becomes 1/4. If I move it 10 times away from me, it actually reduces by, or it becomes 1/100th of the intensity on my body. So the more distance you're able to create between yourself and the device that is emitting the EMF, you are getting basically like the square of the benefit in terms of reducing your exposure to EMF intensity. Similarly, when you're sleeping, don't have your phone right beside your head on your bedstand. Instead, create more distance, put it on a table away from you, or ideally, don't even have it in your room at all. Other things are, see what sources of EMFs you can actually just completely like avoid or eliminate from your life. Instead of wearing wireless headphones that are communicating through Bluetooth between your brain to your phone, maybe switch to wired headphones. That'll be very beneficial in reducing your exposure to EMFs. And there are many sort of other things that, again, you could just be mindful of. Do I even need to have this thing in my life necessarily, or is there a wired alternative because that vastly reduces the EMF radiation? Or simply think, is this even something I need? Can I just eliminate this? So those are the sort of overall tips I would give to reducing your EMF exposure. There are definitely crazy levels you could go to in this pursuit of reducing EMFs from your life. Personally, these are some of the things I do, which is just increasing my distance, and that's what I find reasonable for now. Maybe I'll do more in the future, but for now, this is what I'm doing, and I think this is a good enough start that all of us can do today without really any excuses. The next testosterone hack is simply letting your balls breathe. Now, admittedly, this one will sound kind of funny, but there is actual science and there's a reasoning why this is a talking point that I'm making in this video. And it's because your balls want to be at a very particular temperature for them to work the best. That's why they'll contract when it's cold or they'll sit lower when it's hot. They don't want to be too cold or too hot. And a lot of the times we are having our balls be too hot because of the stuff we're doing day to day, the way we're sitting, what we're wearing, all of that kind of stuff. And this can have harmful effects on our sperm and downstream likely our testosterone levels as well. So what's the solution? This one's a lot easier than some of the other ones. It's simply to stop doing certain habits that are cooking your balls and making them very hot. So one simple thing is to sit with your legs wider. If you're going to sit with your legs basically closed, all the heat from your thighs and from your like balls themselves are like trapped in there, and it's basically overheating your balls. You need to spread out your legs a little bit so that they have a lot more space to breathe and like some room for that heat to dissipate. In sort of the same vein, ideally, don't wear underwear as often. Now, you might need to do so for like day to day when you're going to work and whatever. I'm not saying free ball it and go commando all the time, but at least when you're like going to sleep or when you're home or something, ideally take your underwear off so that your balls, again, have some more breathing room. And lastly, I would suggest that in the shower, stop basically showering in like scalding hot water that, again, will probably be cooking your balls. Instead, you want to shower with water that is more on the mild or even a bit on the colder side, because again, that is just going to cool down your overall body, but especially your balls, which is going to help your guys down there be in better shape. Last but not least, and this might end up being the most controversial of all, but the last testosterone hack is your mindset. One of the most interesting things you come across when researching testosterone is basically that with your brain, you can placebo yourself into having higher testosterone or lower testosterone, all basically depending on your mindset. There have been studies that have shown that when men win, or even simply just think that they win, they think that they're winners, their testosterone level actually goes up. Whereas the opposite, when they have a pessimistic, nihilistic viewpoint and they think of themselves as a loser, their testosterone actually goes down. Now, yes, the argument can certainly be made that, this is just a correlation, or it could be the sort of what came first, the chicken or the egg thing, where it's like, is the high testosterone making someone a winner, or is thinking that someone's a winner making them have high testosterone? I see that those arguments can be made, but at the end of the day, again, think of it logically. If you're going to see yourself as a winner, and you're going to have more confidence in yourself, and you're going to believe that like, yeah, I can do this and whatever, you're going to have that positive mindset, automatically, subconsciously, your actions are going to be that of someone who has their shit more together, and you're going to be more likely to do the good habits that increase your testosterone. So if you're okay with being soft and you're okay with mediocrity and you don't really embrace your role as a man, you think there's something wrong with being masculine, you think there's something toxic about it, you think there's something wrong with a man leading, and all of that kind of stuff, submitting to authority without using your brain, thinking that, someone else is always going to be taking care of you and not really, again, being able to lead yourself. If you're going to have all of these kinds of, for a lack of a better term, like beta mindsets, well, it's not really going to be surprising if your testosterone is lower. You want to have the exact opposite kind of mindsets. You want to believe in yourself. You want to have confidence that you can be a strong man, that you can lead. All of that kind of stuff, those thoughts are going to lead to better testosterone outcomes. Again, whether it's inherently because of those thoughts, or whether it's simply because when you believe in yourself more, you do better actions, and when you don't believe in yourself and you think you're a loser, you basically feed into that and you do loser-like habits. Whatever of those sort of two options it is, or maybe it's a mixture of both, at the end of the day, I am sure that if you're going to have that mindset where you really back yourself, your testosterone levels are going to benefit because of it. So that basically wraps up the video. If you liked the video and found it helpful, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to learn more, visit the link in my description and join my free Skool community. Thanks for watching. Bye.